My dear buddies, so today's topic is about emergency braking. Now we all like to ride fast and cruise at about 130 or 140 kilometers an hour when we are on the highway. But just imagine all of a sudden if there is an animal standing in front of you at about 100 meters away, what would you do? Or imagine a human is trying to cross the road. What would you do in this kind of an emergency situation? So I have written down a few points. Let us discuss about that. Point number one. Now imagine yourself being on your motorcycle, enjoying the ride, and all of a sudden you see a human jumping off from the divider and right in front of you at about 100 or 150 meters away. Now 100 or 150 meters sounds like a lot, but not when you are at about 130 or 140 kilometers an hour. When you're cruising at that speed, you would cover 100 or 150 meters pretty fast. So what should you do? Point number one is, okay, now imagine myself cruising at about 130 or 140 kilometers an hour and I see a human there. First thing to remember is that keep your steering straight. Keep your handle as straight as possible. You know, the road could be curvy or anything, but keep your steering straight, because if you keep your steering slightly to the left or right and then start to brake, then your wheel can skid, the front tire can lose traction. So point number one, keep your steering absolutely straight. And then point number two, that is, in an emergency situation we get into a panic mode, and when we get into a panic mode we end up pulling the brakes this way. Pull the brakes, but never pull the brakes. Always squeeze the brakes, because squeezing is gentle pressure has to be exerted onto the brake lever, because if you end up pulling them, then if you don't have ABS your wheel will lock, and even if you have ABS the front suspension would go down very fast and that will end up disturbing the balance of your motorcycle. Now the third point, that is, this is something which most of us do. When we see something in front in a panic situation, we end up pulling the clutch lever back and then brake. No, you should not even be touching the the clutch lever in an emergency situation or any time during braking, because if you end up pulling the clutch lever back, you are freeing up the engine from the transmission. If you free up the engine from the gears, from the transmission, then the engine would the motorcycle would start to move ahead much faster. The engine braking, you heard about engine braking, the engine braking component would completely disappear. So in a panic situation, start squeezing the brakes, but do not touch the clutch lever at all. Do not even think of pulling it back. Whereas what you should be doing is, you should be downshifting. Now imagine myself, I'm riding at 120, 130 kilometers an hour. I see something in the front. First thing, I keep the steering straight. Next, I start squeezing the brakes, and then I have to downshift now. Downshift is to gain engine braking. I am right now in fifth gear. I downshift to third, fourth, second. So this is how you're supposed to go down. If I'm in fifth, of course I would go down to fourth, third, second. Don't go into first. First is too much of engine braking. So gradually downshift, and downshift should be done with as little clutch as possible. Don't pull the clutch lever all the way back, just little clutch and downshift. All right, that is the another point which you have to keep on your mind. Another point, very important point, that is, now it could be an animal or a human right in front of you, but when you see them, you started to brake, you have your steering straight, you're starting to downshift. Now don't try to go to the left or to the right. Keep a straight path. Decide a path and stay straight. The reason is that if this is a human here and this is your motorcycle, if you start to go to the left or to the right while braking, then the human or the animal would not understand what to do. They would get confused. So if you are only going straight and you are braking at the same time, then the human or the animal would decide a path, and then they would either go to the left or to the right. That way we should not confuse the animal or the human. Let them take a decision to move away. This is what happened to me a long time ago when I was riding a Daytona 675, and just on the main road, a lady was almost walking straight towards me. I kept braking and I maintained a straight path, and that lady stopped. If I would have gone to the left or to the right, I would have confused that lady. And another point that I always mention is that 80% should be your front braking, because rear brake, in case you don't have ABS, it will lock up, and even with ABS, it locks up for a fraction of a second. So first front brake, then downshifting, and third, after you have done 80% of braking with the front, third should be you just tapping slight pressure onto the rear brake, very little pressure onto the rear brake. Rear brake should be used only to slow down the rotation of the rear wheel. And now another point is that while you're doing all of this, all of the points, you have to look at the road, assess the road condition. Is it sandy, or is there water on the road? Is it uneven? Are there bumps? So assess the road condition, and according to that, exert more pressure onto your brake levers. So buddies, this is what I thought about. Now, as you know, I'm not an expert. I'm just a fellow rider like you all. So you also, if you have anything on your mind, any ideas, any tips, suggestions, put them down in the comment section, and let's together make motorcycling a safe hobby to do. And if you're not subscribed to me, you're missing out on 640 videos, friends. So do subscribe. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Thank you.